You're listening to Switched On Australia, the podcast that tracks the opportunities and challenges of the renewable energy transition and electrifying everything, everywhere. Switched On is proudly brought to you by Boundless Earth. Boundless Earth uses philanthropy, investment and direct advocacy to help Australia become a global force in a decarbonised world. Switched On is also brought to you by GoodWe, the all-in-one ESA battery system safely powering Aussie homes, lowering bills and providing energy independence. Hello and welcome to Switched On Australia, produced on Bundjalung country in northern New South Wales. I'm Anne Delaney. Thanks for joining me. Today, we're heading to Germany to look at a fast-growing solar phenomenon, Balkonkraftwerk, or balcony solar. These are small plug-in solar systems that you can hang off a balcony, mount on a fence, or set up in your backyard. And they've taken off in a big way. Some estimates suggest there could now be up to 4 million systems installed across Germany. What started as a DIY workaround has become a consumer product, something you can pick off the shelf from places like IKEA and plug straight into a standard power point. A few things have driven the boom. Solar panels and micro-inverters have become cheap and widely available. Germany has also changed its laws to allow plug-in systems that don't have to be installed by an electrician. And when Russia invaded Ukraine and energy prices surged, balcony solar made a lot of sense for households looking to cut their power bills. But it's not all smooth sailing. Some of Germany's large co-operative and municipal landlords, who control a significant share of the rental housing, they've been pushing back against these systems, creating a new battleground over who gets access to solar. My guest today is Sebastian Müller, chair of the German Association for Plug-in Solar. His organisation has been at the centre of the push to make balcony solar simple, safe and accessible for households. Sebastian Müller, thanks so much for joining the Switched On podcast today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Sebastian, I just want to start. Could you just paint a picture of what the uptake of balcony solar, Balkonkraftwerk, I'm not sure if I've got that pronunciation right, has been in Germany? Where do you see it in Germany? How accessible is it? Who's buying balcony solar? Just some details on what it looks like in Germany at the moment.
Okay, so we believe we have something around 3 to 4 million Balkon Solar, balcony solar devices or balcony solar power plants. We cannot really tell because in theory you have to register them with the market data register. But if you don't do it, nothing happens. So you can still just put them on your balcony or your porch and plug them in and that's it. So there's 1.1 million registered. We believe you have to multiply that times 3 times 4. That would also be what the companies that actually sell them tell us in terms of sales volume. And also there was a study last year done by a marketing company, and they said that around 9% of German households have plug-in PV, and that would sort of fit in the 4 million devices number, because we've got something like 41 million households. So if you say 9%, then you're around roughly 4 million.
Now, these are small systems, aren't they? Just describe what they look like and what can they charge and how much power are they generating?
Small depends on your definition of small, because you still need a large car to transport them home or a cargo bike, and they don't come through the normal post office if you order them by mail. So they will come by something like larger with a large truck. But they're usually 1 to 4 solar panels, and a full normal solar panel is about 1.5 meters times 1.70 meters. So you can estimate it's roughly the height of a normal person, and it's roughly as big as if a normal person stretches out their arms, and they weigh around 20 kilos. So it's not that easy to install them alone. You should get a friend when you hang them on your balcony. You need a sturdy kind of mounting, but that's possible. They are widely available in the market here for all kinds of balconies, from thin metal railings to thick concrete, 35 centimeters balcony railings that are more like a brick wall. That's all available. You can buy them in a variety of stores, like the big hardware store chains have them, although I wouldn't buy them there. They are expensive. IKEA has them. You can also order them from online retailers. That's usually a little bit cheaper. And then you can also just, buy the parts and plug it together. It's not really difficult to do that.
And it's a plug-in system you don't need an
Yes.
electrician for, do you?
Yeah. No, you don't need an electrician. No, that was a very long discussion. Do you need an electrician? But we finally got a technical norm, and the technical norm clearly states it's a household pluggable device like a space heater or a gaming laptop, or if you charge your car for a normal outlet, and you can just plug that into any standard outlet with a circuit. And because there are limitations on it, you can only feed in up to 800 watts. It is possible, and it's not dangerous. It does not overheat the wires. It turns itself off if there is no electricity on the feed-in side, if there's no grid, so you cannot electrocute someone. It turns itself off after 0.1 seconds. That's faster than a vacuuming machine or a old cathode ray television. So there is really no danger in it for the consumer.
And what can it charge? How much can it generate to charge our home electric appliances?
What we usually say, it can supply up to 25% of your household's consumption, but it does not necessarily charge something. It does not have a battery. It feeds in the electricity as it gets. When the sun is shining and you consume electricity, you first use those from your plug-in PV system. And that's depending on your kind of household, how many people live there. If you are at home when the sun is shining, retired people have it easier. If you work during the day, it's more difficult.
Mm.
Then it's like up to 25% of the electricity
Mhm.
for a standard system. And so you can calculate a cost return, something between free under very good conditions under 3 years to like 7 years if you don't have that much sun, you're not that much at home, you don't actually consume that much electricity, then it takes longer to repay its installation cost.
Right, and what about the impact that it's having on electricity bills?
Well, if it's 25%, then it's also 25% less of your electricity bill, of your consumption. Um,
Bills are quite high in Germany, aren't they? Can you just give me an idea of what people would pay if they didn't have balcony solar?
I pay 33 euro cents per kilowatt hour. I'm not sure how that translates into Australian dollars. There's also like a 15 euro sort of connection charge. Um,
Probably about 50 cents.
yeah, you can go lower if you get a good deal. You can go much higher if you got a bad deal. Usually shopping around for a good electricity price is helpful, but that's sort of the price you usually pay. Something like 30 cents is like the average household consumer price. Industry gets better rates. They get much better rates.
And what are people saying about balcony solar? I mean, clearly the uptake has been quite dramatic, so a lot of people like it. Has it created any tension amongst, the German people?
Uh, it has great attention in the sense that large rental companies, either municipally owned or co-ops, are on the creative forefront of fighting it, and that we see the main uptake is in people living in single family homes or in apartments they own. And we do not really see so much as an uptake in people who live in rented apartments or in people with low income. So as more southwesterly you get, as more likely you are to live in your own house. And if you're sort of around 50-ish or older, you are very likely to have something like that and buy it. If you are young, East German living in a co-op owned housing, you have to struggle to be allowed to use it.
Right, because balcony solar, it seems to be so easily designed for renters who have to
Yeah.
move, that they can take their balcony solar with them if they have to move house.
Yeah.
So that sounds like it's a big shame that a lot of the co-op rental agencies aren't allowing that to happen, even though I understand that Germany did change some laws to help to facilitate renters
Yeah.
to access balcony solar.
Yeah. Actually, you need to have it in two sets of laws. One is sort of all these energy laws where you need to have where we needed to have a legal definition that's separate from a big solar system, and that sort of regulates that a lot of the regulations that big solar systems have to apply do not apply to a plug-in PV device, and that you have a right to connect it. That was done. And then the second step is that you give people who rent and people who own an apartment in a large building, who are only co-owners of the building in a sense, also the right to install it. And that was also changed. We now got a change in the contract law that governs rental contracts, and that now says you have the right to put in a plug-in PV system. There's also like this specifies 5 other things you can also do, like a right to change the apartment, and if you are disabled, or to add a wall box for your electric car, and so on. And now people are battling with the help of us and others, landlords, because the law says you have the right if it is not an unbearable burden to the landlord.
Right.
And we are now discussing what an unbearable burden for the landlord means,
I see. Right.
and how landlords and what kind of conditions landlords can apply. That you can interpret very, very differently. But what I was really shocked about is that co-ops, which if you live in a co-op, you co-own the company that rents the apartment to you. So you're basically a co-owner. And that large municipal renting companies that are owned by the city, usually very often with city councillors on the oversight board, do have a lot of creativity and a lot of problems with plug-in PV, even though they very often have like these very shiny green renewable sustainability statements on their website and commitments and so on.
So what sort of things are they saying to try and prevent the balcony solar going into some of these rental apartments? Are they concerned about safety? What are they concerned about mainly?
I'm not certain if the concerns they tell their tenants or they then tell later to a district court are actually genuine beliefs, in the sense that they believe that if this happens, it's dangerous, or they might be liable for something, or if it's just that it interferes with their identity beliefs about what it means to be a person working in a company that rents out stuff to people. So what we see on sort of concerns is, on the one hand, is very always something about this might exceed the limits of the electrical system in the apartment or in the building.
Right.
And that is frankly, uh, am I allowed to say bullshit?
You've just said it.
Okay, so that is frankly not possible, because if you think of it, the system is limited to 800 watts feed in. An 800 watt feed in means you have a lot of devices in your house that can draw much more than 800 watts for much longer time. Because if I get a gaming laptop or a gaming PC, that draws much more power. If
Right.
I get an electric space heater, I can let that run for 10 hours and draw like a kilowatt out of it, or even more. If I get a electric stove, that and there's like these small ones that you can just plug into a socket. I can put out and draw much more power from it if let's cook something for 4 hours. Because if you think it's 800 hours is top, and the norm says a maximum of 960 watts peak of solar panels. And as we all know, the sun goes up. You have very little in the morning when the sun goes up because it has to rise and then the thing has to shine onto the panels. Then at some point during midday, depending on the direction of the panels and how they are mounted, you've got sorts of peak. The peak lasts for maybe an hour, and then production again goes down and you have nothing around 4, 5, 6, depending on how long the day is and how the direction is. So this maximum power comes only like an hour or two. And this whole idea that it's too much for the electrical system in the house, even if it was like a house with 50 apartments and everyone would have one and no one would be at home consuming electricity, that is frankly not a problem. So it does not overwhelm your electrical system. Then it's sort of a question of liability. They are always afraid that might be liable for something. There's like questions, could it fall off?
Surely that's a legitimate concern.
That's a legitimate, yeah. But then if you use the standard mountings that are provided,
Yeah.
and they come with instruction sheets on how to put it on, and if you do it as you're told in the instruction manual and in the videos provided by those people who sell it to you, then falling off is not a problem. And falling off is not a problem because we haven't heard of a case where it fell off so far.
Really?
So, and
Given the 1.1 million registered units and possibly up to 4 million units that you have not
yeah,
heard
and
of one falling off.
no, and I presume I would have heard of it because I guess the first thing that people would do, like, oh, my panels fell off and they fell on my neighbor's new Mercedes, and now I have to pay like 20,000 euros to get his Mercedes repaired. It would probably run to us and ask us for some kind of help, for a lawyer or to deal with the insurance or whatever. And even if they were to fall off, the courts have established that you can demand that your tenant has an insurance. And in that case, if you as tenant have installed it properly, the insurance will pay for the damages. So
Yes.
this is sort of covered in a sense.
So,
Um,
what you're dealing with these co-ops and the municipal rental agencies, this is just the latest battle, though, isn't it, to get balcony solar into German homes? Because I understand it's taken years of lobbying by solar and clean energy advocates to change policies to foster its adoption. Take me back a little bit. When did all of this start?
you could go back and say it started in the late 1990s because there is like technical papers, and there's like the first Austrian guy who has a device called the balcony power dwarf, and he sells it for an enormous amount by today's money. And the idea was there for a very long time. But then you had to wait until solar panels got cheap
Mm,
and small inverters got cheap and available and reliable and sorts of also a commodity, more or less. And then you had to wait for energy prices to go up.
mm,
So we had something like, it became a thing in Germany in the late 2010s. I think I got mine in 2019. Sorts of the discussion around started in 2018 because I'm a member of a local energy co-op, and there was sorts of this discussion, oh, maybe we could order some for our members, but then I was the only one who bought one. And so it really started off back then. And then they also already had like a discussion, not a discussion, a group in the German Electrotechnical Standards Committee talking about it. But the group, sort of the standarding body, took like, I think, 5 years or even longer to produce a technical standard, which we now only have since December and
Last December.
no, last December. So December 2025. It was published on the 14th of November, 2025. I can remember that because I lost the keys to my car that day. While jogging in the forest, and it took the car company 6 weeks to produce another key. And the
You didn't have a
second
car
iteration,
for 6 weeks.
yes, and it's not that bad. I live in a town where you actually don't really need a car, but
Okay.
um, it was inconvenient to have no car during winter. Um, so end of the story is
You
it
have the
took them
technical
very long.
standards. You have the technical
We have the
standards.
technical standards, and with the technical standards, you can say this is a product to the technical standards, or it adheres to the technical standards, and you have to argue very much against it in why somebody should not be able to use it.
But wasn't there a turning point around 2019 when the plug-in solar devices were introduced more into a mass market? Didn't something happen then?
Yeah, they appeared sort of in 2019 in sorts of, well, it's not really say mass market, but specialty stores, and you could buy them.
Yeah.
And I got mine in 2019. And then in 2022, when Russia invaded all of Ukraine, or tried to invade all of Ukraine, and energy prices in Europe went through the roof, there was a lot of craze around it and very much pressure to legalize it, allow it, and ease all of these kinds of restrictions. And that also helped in a sense.
So it was a whole lot of things kind of coming together that
Yeah.
really has enabled this to happen.
Yeah, in the end, but it's very much what our NGO does is sorts of like this writing down how it works, writing down how to counter arguments, giving technical explanations and giving sorts of solutions. And it's often very sort of very detailed, where you say it's something like the work is somebody comes up with a question and you have to email like 3 people and 4 people and then write down and say, okay, this is the way how you could go around it. And then you've written it down and published it. And 6 months later, you see people referencing it on internet forums and saying, yeah, this is how it helped me. And it's like really a very sorts of detailed policy work, but you can change these things easily. There's not a lot that where you have roadblocks where people with vested interests really can mount a big of a defense. Yeah, we see that these rental companies, they don't want it, but on the other hand, this is as an energy source, it's so adorable in a sense because it's
Yes.
small and you can touch it and you can see it's not dangerous. It's much easier and it has much less opposition than, say, building a windmill on the mountain where
Right.
you get it will not, I mean, I have to say, plug-in PV alone will not solve our energy needs. We need windmills on the mountains and offshore and large solar installations and large batteries and so on. But if you can reduce all the household consumption already by 25%, and maybe if you go into the next step that we are seeing now, where people get sorts of small battery systems, something like 2 kWh, 5 kWh. 2 kWh is sorts of the sorts of normal size right now. Then they also don't need to consume electricity when it's most expensive.
Mm.
That's usually the time between sort of 5 and 7 in the evening, because if you have solar panels and you can save some of that electricity during the day, and then between 5 and 7, then it's most expensive when we also have to use expensive gas that we have to import in Germany, either from Russia or from the US or for the Strait of Hormuz, which doesn't work right now.
No.
So very well. So then we can also sort of get out of this kind of demand because people can just run it on the electricity they have stored at that time. And that's sort of the second stage. These systems are around, like the small battery systems are around, they're becoming more and more common. I think half of the systems sold last year included some kind of battery. So this is also sort of the next step that's coming.
Okay, we'll take a short break and we'll be back after this short message.
G'day, Alex Carey here, proud ambassador for GoodWe. The GoodWe ESA 3060 all-in-one commercial solution is available now from GoodWe wholesalers. With a massive 50 kilowatt hours of the battery eligible for the federal rebate, it's the perfect solution for small businesses. The commercial energy storage range from GoodWe is growing, with more models launching soon. Visit goodwe.com.au for more information or contact the local GoodWe team.
My guest today is Sebastian Müller, the chair of Balkon Solar, the main not-for-profit supporting the rollout of balcony solar in Germany. As you say, balcony solar isn't going to create a huge energy source. We need other sources. But it does strike me that one of the other values that it has, other than helping lower electricity costs, is it seems to have a real social value, enabling people to participate in climate action, I suppose. It builds energy literacy. It helps
Yeah.
people take action and also just have a bit of independence from the grid.
Yeah, what you can see is that once people get it, a lot of them also get some device to measure how much it produces, and then they start going around to their friends and annoying them by showing, look, my system is now producing that much energy, and show that on their mobile phone. And you often see remarkable mobile phone skills in senior citizens when showing when so telling them usually, yeah. And of course, people start to think about their consumption and when to turn on their washing machine and how much stuff, how much energy some of the things they have use. And then very often, if they only have an apartment, you see them sometimes getting into more energy efficient devices. If people have a house, it's very often they buy a plug-in PV system, and then they notice that this is obviously fun and it does not burn down your house. So they either buy a bigger system for the rooftop, or they start DIY installing more and more solar panels on the fence, in the garden, on the walls. If you do it yourself on the rooftop, you should get scaffolding. That's my advice. Don't climb on your rooftop without scaffolding and proper harness. But they start doing this or buying it or doing some kind of fixture where they tell somebody, okay, you install it on the roof and I do the rest. And sort of it enables them, and they talk to their friends, and in a way, it gets infectious. And we can see this in neighborhoods. You can often see like a first panel goes up, and then if you are there 3 months later, suddenly you see 3 or 4 around that sort of, and it becomes socially acceptable and part of what a house is allowed to look like now, because we have social norms what we can put into our front porch or on the balcony or not. I mean, not in the UK. You can put anything in the front porch in the UK, but in Germany, there's like social norms about that.
How big do you reckon balcony solar can get?
Well, if we have 10% right now in Germany, in a single European country, I don't see any limits why we shouldn't have 10% in every European country. And then you have to think of there's countries that are much, much more sunnier than Germany. Spain, Italy, Greece, they can have much better return on their investment. I guess also Australia is much sunnier, or the US apparently is more sunny, so you will get much better return on the panels. And everyone who says it does not work here in Australia or in the UK or in France or in Switzerland has to argue why the Germans can have it and why we can't have that. And that's sort of, a little bit difficult, because the other day a friend of mine from France, he sent me pictures and said, yeah, I got this system on my house now, and it has I built it myself. It has 6 panels and this and that much capacity and so on. And I said, wow, this is huge. Did you have to register it, and do you have to do something about it? And yeah, in theory you have to register it, but this is France. Nobody cares for the rules. We do it anyway. And so I thought, okay, so if even if off the land of, nuclear power and so on, they just start doing this now, then it will happen. And it will happen because it's cheaper. In the end, it is just an economic thing, and you can't stop it because it's cheap. It's like people downloading films from Pirate Bay or something like that. They do it because it's cheap, and you can make it more difficult, and you can certainly create a sort of a market, an appropriate market, but then people will just do it.
Having said that, it is difficult in Australia. Australia currently treats solar as hardwired generation, which automatically creates regulatory barriers for the systems like this. And some of that friction is a result of to try and make sure we install safe systems. What do you suggest Australia should do to accelerate access to balcony solar?
I'm not so knowledgeable what actually the technical or the supposedly technical and legal hurdles are, but what I would say is you probably already have people using plug-in PV in Australia. They will not tell you, and they will probably install it in, a place where you don't see it. But the inverter,
And these would be like DIY
and they
systems, essentially.
probably made it DIY. So
Yeah.
because that was it before. It was sort of a thing with a legal category and properly regulated in Germany. People had it and installed it, and often in places where you didn't see it, and then people got bolder and they installed it in places where you could see it, but it was still clear that a lot of these systems are not registered. And then you have to think of what's the danger to the grid is negligible. The proper inverter, the proper brand inverters, they turn it themselves off if there is no grid, and they do that within a defined time, and so on and so on. So this is no problem. There is no problem to the electrician working on the down grid or the lineman or whatever. I guess you have to go and ask your regulators, who might be part of sorts of regulatory capture by utilities or others, why if this is possible in Germany, and if it's easily possible in Germany, why shouldn't this be easily possible in Australia? I mean, sure, if you're a representative of electricians, you will, of course, tell people there's dangers in it involved, yes, but there's dangers in any kind of electrical application that we operate. And as a society and as countries, we have come to sorts of agreements or implicit agreements about what kind of dangers we think are agreeable and what kind of dangers we are allowed to live with. And any kind of household device that we have is dangerous. If you buy a toaster, you can burn yourself. But then there's a manual with the toaster that says this is how you should operate it. there's probably a technical norm on toasters that says, okay, the heating elements have to be this long away, and the toaster has to work like for 10,000 toastings or something at least safely. And this is how the mechanism is supposed to work. And then you can produce this device and you can sell it and people can toast their bread. And this is, of course, safer than if they start toasting their bread, I don't know, on an open flame grill or something. I don't know what's the alternative, but this is how it works. And it will just come around, and you can make it safe. You can have like a program where you say as a government, okay, we tell people or we tell someone, let's do a safety assessment. Let's see what are the dangers. Let's see how we have to deal with them. How do we certify mounting systems and so on. Or you can just don't do anything about it and these systems will come around eventually. So that's probably just a thing to say. Eventually these systems will come around you and they will be there.
So your advice to Australia would be to get cracking on the balcony solar?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably, I don't know how it worked here. You got like a couple of people who think it's a cool thing. They get an association. They call the necessary people. They make the technical regulations or recommendations for use. You can just copy our website, more or less. That's everything written down there. And then it's there. So, I mean, why shouldn't it be possible in Australia?
Well, let's see if that happens, Sebastian. Sebastian Müller, thank you so much for joining the Switched On podcast today.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
And Sebastian Müller is the chair of the German Association for Plug-in Solar, Balkon Solar, a not-for-profit helping drive the rollout of balcony solar across Germany. If you'd like to find out a bit about what's holding up balcony solar in Australia, check out an interview I did with Brent Clark from Wattblock back in February. You'll find it and all the Switched On back catalogue on your favourite podcast platform. I'm Anne Delaney. I'll see you next time. Switched On Australia was proudly brought to you by GoodWe. GoodWe's all-in-one ESA home battery helps Australians store more of their own solar energy and rely less on the grid. With strong local support and technology already trusted in thousands of homes, GoodWe is making the switch to electrification simpler and more affordable. GoodWe is proud to work with Australian cricketer and GoodWe ambassador Alex Carey. Find out more at goodwe.com.au. Switched On Australia is also proudly brought to you by Boundless Earth. Boundless Earth uses philanthropy, investment and direct advocacy to help Australia become a global force in a decarbonised world.